All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, it's technically our Wheel of Time day, and we will tie that in to today's conversation. But I'm wearing a university shirt in honor of the person who went to universities to have conversations. And it was, it was really, you said it hit you hard. It hit me hard
hmm
too. And part of it was timing
hmm
because we had just quoted him and some of the stuff he had done in the last video. And as I was uploading it, I was listening to the news that Charlie Kirk had been assassinated. And it was while they were still talking about, oh, he was shot, he's in stable condition, and oh no, officially he is no longer
hmm
with us.
hmm
And it hit me hard in a lot of ways, partly because I was listening to Timcast and they were good friends. And so he's trying to deliver the news while he's holding back tears. And the other part, and that's the empathy. If you have any empathy and you listen to that,
hmm
you can't not feel it a little bit. And I felt it a lot. And the other part was he stood for a lot of things, but the main thing he stood for and he represented is so important. And that's why it's probably the biggest tragedy in the last 10 years. Easy in my lifetime, maybe.
I've been, when I've been scrolling through X, things that the last several days that hit me about, I want to remember this and I might want to reiterate this. I have been reposting just so I have it on my timeline and I can go through it if I want. And a comedian that I follow, Gerard Michaels, who I found on Normal World, but he also does, I can't remember the podcast he does with Candace Warbucks sometime or frequently. Um, and he put it this way: Charlie Kirk gave his opponents a mic and a chance to present their case in civil debate. They responded with insults, allegations, canceling, debanking, deplatforming, demonetizing him, anything to silence them. Still, he offered them a mic, and they murdered him for it. And I think that has been, I think that was the most succinct one of those there were a lot of people saying similar things of he was the nice one,
Hmm.
which I think it is one of the reasons I started to become more and more agitated the more people I saw either outright celebrating or downplaying his death. Basically, you have people who are outright saying, outright celebrating it, and then you have people who are basically saying, well, it's his own fault. He brought it on himself. And there are a lot of not just right people, but just people in the discussion sphere, some of whom are more left leaning, who are saying, I don't know who did this, but do you realize he was the nice one?
Hmm.
All these things about him, and this is one of the things where I had to think, and this is where it gets dangerous, and I might, ramble and get emotional because I really had to um psychoanalyze myself because one of my thoughts all through Wednesday and even into Thursday was, why is this hitting me so hard? Because I can only recall four times in my life where I have gotten emotional at the news of someone's death who I did not know personally.
Hmm.
And now, as you said, if you have empathy, and Robin Williams,
Mm.
famous, he, a lot of people liked him, a lot of people liked his work, a lot of people thought well of him as a person as well. And so not just his death, but the fact that he committed suicide hit people hard. And if you have any degree of empathy, you're going to go, oh man, that's tragic. But you're not necessarily going to get emotional. You're not necessarily going to get teary eyed over that. There has to be, I think, some sort of connection there. And so, for instance, um, I teared up when I heard that Robert Jordan had died. Um, for a couple of reasons. Is he was like my favorite philosophy professor. And I took his class for years. and I discussed with my friends for years. And I read, I read papers about him, if you will, the long theory posts on him. So it was someone that I felt connected to
Hmm.
and also had a tremendous amount of respect for. But also, you have to remember this was before everything was online all the time. And so the updates about his health weren't as frequent. And so the there had been posts that he was doing better, even though there's no cure for what he had. But there had been posts that he was doing better. And then all of a sudden there was a it's not looking so good. And then pretty quickly after that it was he's passed. and
Yeah.
and so that was one of the reasons it hit. I
Yeah,
got
and well, this one that one's tougher to parallel because there was so much lead up and time to
yes.
stew over it, where
Hmm.
this one just happened. I mean, again, I was getting news in real time as he was at the hospital, he was in stable condition, and now he's gone. There was no processing time
Hmm.
there. There was no, I mean, I guess there was that moment of he was stable, and you're like, come on, pull through, pull through, pull through. But it was just so fast. It almost like was a shot to the nuts, man. And
And that's one of the things I was thinking. Well, is it because we had just referenced him, we were just talking about him and his work?
well, and
Because
you see a headline like that, you're like, oh, this is just clickbait.
mm,
This is just clickbait. Someone shot, and then you read the news article, and it was shots fired in a debate, right? Something stupid like that. But then you listen for 5 minutes, it's like, no, he was actually shot.
mhm,
And we're so sheltered in the West when it comes to this kind of stuff that kind of news, you don't believe it at first.
mhm.
Like if this was a cartel election in, Central America, what 60 people died in the latest election round there? And what did we just have in Germany? Seven people from the what is the right leaning
I can't remember.
a something a whatever they're the political party there. Seven people died on the same day, and they're like, oh, unknown. It's like seven people of a political party in a major
Right.
election cycle don't just die on the same day.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. We're so sheltered from that when it hits, it hits. And just to kind of bring this home and why it's important, not just from a listening and seeing and just being crushed by a 31-year-old man with two children and a loving wife being killed by somebody who was realistically just misinformed, if you really break it down.
Oh yeah.
What he stood for was, well, let me quote Phil Labonte here in response to Rolling Stone magazine. Rolling Stone posts, the MAGA right says Charlie Kirk is a martyr for freedom of expression, but still want people to lose their jobs over criticizing his rhetoric. His response was, the let's have a conversation guy got shot in the neck and died. You're dealing with the other guy now. And that's what it is. I have this story or actually it's a Wikipedia. Uh
Well,
and
while you're pulling that up, that's a great
no, this is
point.
this is something related. Is
Well,
This is the
but
Christmas truce
oh, yeah, okay.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
1914. Someone had to start that, right?
Hmm.
Someone had to put up a truce flag, walk out into no man's land, and start a conversation.
Hmm.
This assassination was the shooting of that guy.
Which incidentally happened the following year.
Yeah.
That in
Hmm.
1916 there was an attempt to recreate it, but by that point, one, leadership said absolutely not, we're not doing this. But also, you had had some of the bloodiest, most brutal fighting in history going on for a year. There were far fewer people interested in making nice with the other side.
Hmm.
And that is another point people have been making ad nauseum about Charlie Kirk's murder is, you know, all these Democrat politicians and leftist pundits saying, oh, we need to turn down the temperature. You're the ones that have been calling people like Charlie Kirk, the nice guy,
Hmm.
a literal Nazi for years.
Hmm.
And now you want to turn down the temperature?
No,
Except you,
they're just saying the
yeah.
words. They don't
Except
want to turn down
then
the
when you
temperature.
look at more at what people are saying, you realize, oh no, you don't actually want to turn down the temperature.
Hmm.
And that was kind of the final straw for me. It's because it's one thing to see people like Libs of TikTok and Andy No who are cataloging what's going on X and on Blue Sky of people celebrating this.
Now this is uh,
Mm-hmm.
history. What is this? I forget what the actual site is, but it's something of the chronicling of the World War II saga. And you just brought up they're trying to. Oh, they're saying the words now. High commands on both sides. Order
Mm-hmm.
the end of the truce. All right. Go back to your trenches, every man. Everybody back to your trenches. The high command were the ones that were responsible for ending the truce, and I guarantee freaking you, they were the responsible for the sniping of the people who tried to get it going again.
Yep.
And what we have, and I recommend this video from Chase Hughes. Let me share that here so you can see the title: Charlie Kirk's death exposed the biggest scam in history. This is the PSYOP guy. This is the guy who used to run PSYOPs. He was in charge of running the PSYOPs. And everybody is dismissing him because he's out there on the interwebs saying, here is exactly how we're being psyoped by our government. He's like, it's not Republican or Democrat. It's not left or right. It's the people in power
Mm-hmm.
keeping us in this situation. And and he goes into detail for about 20 minutes exactly how you do it. No one hired this guy to shoot him. That's what everybody conspiracy theory. The government, the CIA went and
Yeah.
got him and hired him. No, they just put enough stuff out there that some wackadoo is going to do something at some point. That's exactly what they do.
Well, and what is so infuriating is I've ranted about months ago is yeah, over a year ago now, because my point after the first assassination attempt on Trump, when he actually, got hit, was Trump had been saying, and his supporters had been saying, if they can come after me, they can come after you with regards to the lawfare. And my point was, they already have. Remember, we brought up I don't remember if it was the bail hearing or the plea hearing for the grown ass man who ran over an 18-year-old and killed him
Hmm.
because he was a Trump supporter. And his excuse was he was a member of a radical white nationalist supremacist group.
Hmm.
And remember, in his hearing, his entire concern was about what this was going to do to his life, the business he had built, the family he had, the children he had. Absolutely no empathy for the fact that he had just murdered an 18-year-old kid. This this isn't new. It's just shocking because of the manner it happened to, and again, because of who it happened to. As
Hmm.
Gerard Michael says, this is the guy who just gave you a mic and said, let's talk.
Hmm.
And he did it in a way. One of the things that I didn't really like Charlie Kirk when he first came to my attention because I don't know that people had started using this term before, but he was a big MAGA guy, Trump supporter from the primary days, and I wasn't sure how much was real and if guy was a grifter, as we would call
Mm.
it now.
Yeah.
But also he was pretty raw, and I should have been more sympathetic because I didn't realize until later how incredibly young he was when he started in public life and in debate and in the punditry. He was incredibly young. And over the years, we have seen him literally mature,
He officially
physically and
started it
intellectually.
as a profession at 18, but that's
Hmm.
because he couldn't officially start it as a profession until he was 18.
Yep.
He was part of student movements in high school and all of
Yep.
that. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
That's why he was so big by 31.
but if you
Yeah.
watch clips of him, and not, a snippet, but a lengthier clip, one of the things that will strike you is, you know, not to bash Ben Shapiro, but Ben Shapiro is an autistic robot out there to win. he is doing an actual debate. You call them debates, but Charlie Kirk,
Let people talk.
he seemed to be earnestly and honestly trying to convince that person. So we talk about, you know, when you debate, when you talk, you may not convince that person, but hey, other people are listening. And while that's true, you still need to try and make that personal connection to the person you're talking to. And it's pretty clear with someone like Shapiro that when he gets into a confrontational back and forth with a lefty, he is trying to score points and he is trying to win. Charlie Kirk came across as someone who was earnestly and honestly trying to convince the person he was talking to. He knew there was an audience. He knew that was part of the point. That was the reason he created an organization and a movement. But he had a tremendous amount of humanity.
Hmm.
And this is the person they killed.
Well, and doubly important because he did it in an environment that desperately needs a a needle pricking the bubble of the echo chamber,
Mm-hmm.
which was universities.
Yes.
Trust me, I'm in my diversity class this semester,
Oh, gosh.
well, I chose the best one for me, which is aging, especially since I'm the second oldest person in the class. So I was hoping I'd be the oldest, but I have one friend that she's a little older than me. But there's three of us representing the 40s in the class, so we kind of banded together. But that's a side point. But the professor will just throw stuff out there, and I brought this up before with patriarchy. I hear the word patriarchy in these circles, and it reminds me of that old Taco Bell commercial that they were advertising their high protein value meals,
Protein.
and it was all the bodybuilders coming out and with the protein shakes, and they're like, "Oh, I like protein. I like protein. I love
Protein.
protein. Here, give me
Someone
some
get this man
protein."
some protein.
But at the end of the commercial, they just go into like a tick of
Protein. Protein.
protein. I hear that exact same thing when I hear the word patriarchy in these classes because they just like throw it in there. They're just like, oh, patriarchy, patriarchy, patriarchy. It just becomes a tick at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you do realize the ultimate patriarchy is if we lived in the wild. I would be quite popular if lions and tigers and bears were around it, because I could chuck a spear. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the ultimate patriarchy is the wild. The West, you calling that a patriarchy? No, 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 no. The modern West is not. It has some elements, but let's like 10% now. So that's not even like registering on the scale. But these words just come out. Capitalism is the one they keep bringing up. Part of the problem with aging is capitalism. I'm like, really? Every single person in this room is a beneficiary of capitalist systems. And if you're calling America a capitalist system, you're wrong. It's a mixed system.
Mm-hmm.
And all the dysfunction that is happening is because it is a mixed system. If you want to talk about healthcare costs, we've talked about this ad nauseum on this channel. Healthcare costs are so high because of Medicare and Medicaid, because they're trying to milk the government for everything it's worth. But those systems are making sure that they're not paying more than the average person. So what do? They don't lower the cost of Medicare and Medicaid so the average person's taken care of. They raise the cost of the average person so they can charge Medicare and Medicaid more. This is the fact that it's a mixed system with a basically 18 layers of bureaucracy is why everything is the way it is. You're criticizing capitalism when you're not even talking about capitalism. So it's capitalism has risen more. I came from nothing to living a decently comfortable life because of capitalism. It was the only way. I'm an entrepreneur.
And effort, which is also something else that
Well, meritocracy
what was so
is part of capitalism. Yeah.
noteworthy about Charlie Kirk is that he didn't just he didn't just talk about, he did.
Hmm.
And that was why he was not 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 just successful in his chosen professional endeavor, but also why he was successful intellectually and culturally is because he did.
Hmm.
And a big part of what he did that was so important, as you say, pricking that bubble, is he was confronting people to do what you talked about last time when we were talking about rigid thinking is, look, just say, yeah, but is that true?
Hmm.
And that was a lot of what he did. He would challenge the assumptions of the people in this academic university bubble. And I kind of got myself off on a tangent there, but where I was going a second ago was kind of the straw that made me think, okay, I have to talk about this. Is it's one thing to see libs of TikTok and Andy No and others posting screenshots and video clips of people celebrating,
Ugh.
but then there's also the
If you
the
are celebrating anybody's death,
mhm.
you're a shit person. I'm
If
sorry.
it's not literally Hitler, then yes,
Yeah, we
which is
celebrated
the problem.
Osama bin Laden, but Osama bin Laden was a direct threat.
Hmm. An mass murderer, yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, it's
but
not even about the revenge. It's about that he was still a threat to
yeah,
people's lives.
um, there's also the category of people who are trying to sound sympathetic while not, as you pointed out earlier, of the group of, while I don't condone political violence, and now let me tell you why he had it coming, is basically what they're doing. And I
Hmm.
was scrolling through Facebook, which I do a couple of times a week because it's mostly useless. Do people just not use it anymore? Did when Facebook got Instagram, did everyone just switch to Instagram? Because no one ever posts anything on Facebook
No,
anymore.
they do post, but you get four ads and
The algorithm is just
suggestions.
that terrible. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
per
right.
per scroll.
Well,
Yeah.
anywho, one of the things at the top was someone I have friended, someone I went to college with, and is way lefty and has gotten more radical as she's gotten older. Imagine that.
Mutual when we went to college or later.
I don't remember if you would know her or not, but single, professional female. She's an awful, and
Okay.
she has gotten more awful as she's gotten older.
Awful
And
stands for affluent white female liberal. Okay.
yep.
Which it should
So
be affluent white female lefty because liberal is not left anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
and she made one of these posts, and it was basically I don't condone her words, but quote, I'm not going to shed any tears.
Ugh.
Well, you don't have to shed any tears, but you're doing more than just not shedding any tears, because she also posted a bunch of screenshots of headlines about what an awful person Charlie Kirk was. And this is there's a point here about rigid thinking is one of the I should have said something more erudite than I did, but I was in a mood. And so my response was, sorry, I apologize for saying this, and I should have taken my own advice and sat for a second and thought, do I really want to click post here, or should I erase this and say something different? Because what I
You
said
could always
was,
send me a screenshot before you send it.
I know.
That
So what
that puts a step in between. A step in between is one of the
mhm.
best ways to break a habit. So,
Because what I said was, what I posted was, in his personal, and this is true, this is documented truth. In his personal life, Martin Luther King held orgies and abused women. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. That is true. That is verifiable fact.
hmm.
So it's probably a good thing he was killed, and we shouldn't celebrate his holiday. What I should have said, what I should have said
Okay, so
was,
that's what you wrote. Okay, so I was just parsing out what you're saying now versus what you wrote. Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was not advisable, my
now
friend.
what I should have said
I get the
is,
satire there, but
mhm,
99% of the people reading that post would not get the satire.
all of those screenshots are lengthy headlines with subheadlines that have quotations around a single word. That should be a giant red flag. And you should look for the context,
Mhm.
because maybe, just maybe, he was not the awful misogynist, white nationalist, theocracy, blobbity blob, whatever ist you're ascribing to him. because
Hmm.
in context, none of what you are saying is true. It is the good people on both sides thing, but worse because literally it would be a single word in quotations because okay, that was a single word that yes, he literally said, but then you've got a lengthy two sentences on either side of that word explaining to you what he said.
Hmm.
I suspect that's not actually what he said.
I'm going to bring this down to a level of personal relationship because remember the sociology is basically the collective psychology, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is everybody's psychology thrown into averages for society. Have you ever had a friend that was going through a breakup and they were telling you everything horrible about it, but you knew the person they were breaking up with? And you knew that it was just a perspective thing because
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't as horrible as it seemed. That's what you're getting. The problem is you don't know the person that is being broken up with. So if you have your friend and it's someone, some rando, you're like, oh yeah, he's yeah, your best girlfriend is in girl space friend telling you, oh, he did this and he did this and he was so abusive. We talked about it with our narcissism episode. Oh, he did this and then he manipulated me and da 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 da. Da. Everything's externalized and you don't know shit about this person. You're going to trust your friend and you're going to think that person's a shitty ass person. They might be, but also they might not be because this emotional hurt person is telling you everything from a perspective of an emotional hurt person. The problem is, on the political scale, is there are people using that concept to manipulate you. Okay, Charlie Kirk, I would love to have been on the opposite side of one of his microphones because I would have had a discussion that is very much like our Sunday school with Heath episodes. Okay, you have this value, but it is based on this faith. Is it really the best thing for most people? That's the conversation we would have had because I know I would have disagreed with him on a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of things he valued were faith-based. And as everybody knows, if you've listened to an episode of two of here, I struggle with things that are faith-based. I have to work from first principles. That's just the way my mind works, and it won't go away. Uh, and so we would have had that discussion. And he's a very great debater. So he probably would have kicked my ass. But at the same time, the discussion would have been had in front of a lot of people, and a lot of people would have taken his arguments and my arguments and made their own decisions. And that's what you saw happening. And what it really boiled down to a lot of the time was people spitting out what they've been indoctrinated to say, and him coming back with this, this is where it kind of threw me off a little bit at first, but he was ready for it because he
Mm-hmm.
knew what the indoctrination process was. So he was better prepared than the people on the mic. So it was a little bit of an unfair fight. And he's just very charismatic. So that helps too. But it was never hateful. It was never. Uh, did you see the Stephen King issues?
Mm-hmm.
Where Stephen King said basically he was one of those that you were talking about that said, well, he deserved it basically because he advocated for stoning people. And when everybody came, I mean, the mob, the Twitter mob or X mob, everybody came back at him with how many points of evidence do we need to bring to you that he didn't? His own words in so many ways. Credit to King, he apologized. Credit to him, he apologized, but he still said the stupid thing. What are you being told about somebody versus what did they actually say? And gosh, I really wish I would have been on the opposite side of a microphone from him because we would have had a productive conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And there were actually there were people that were very prepared, even though they were
Productive for
indoctrinated.
both of you and for everyone listening because the reason we do this and have been doing it, even though, no one's listening, we don't care because it is important to have these discussions, not just because we think different things. And credit to Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Haidt, because they're the ones who kind of opened my own eyes to this. Is it's not just about
I got
thinking
height
different
right up here.
things,
Yeah.
it's about thinking in different ways.
Mhm.
You know, this is why
Well,
I
that
run things
you brought
past my
up.
wife, because she thinks not just different things. We actually think the same things about most issues, but a lot of the times we have gotten there in a completely different way, and that is important.
Okay, so two points here. I have height here. This book particularly is The Righteous Mind, which is how politics separates people,
Mm,
even though we're all kind of the same. And it is actually the entire he's a social psychologist. So the entire social psychological process of why people think different ways, what people value differently, and how that pushes you in different directions politically. So and but it's like okay, uh more conservative people value these things. More liberal people value these things. Now, that was a little bit before we had this massive progressive movement, which has become illiberal. So
very.
yeah, so it is before that, but it is about personality types. It's about value systems. It's about all of these things, and why that can kind of divide us. Actually, that's the whole point of the book. Why this divides us, and awareness is the first step to healing. Like if you're not aware of this is why people that can't feel pain die
Mm.
because they're not aware of the nail they just stepped on and it gets infected and their leg gets gangrene, right? They're not aware of all the little things that are killing them daily, which those of us that feel pain, it sucks, but it's a signal. So awareness is the first step to healing because you need the signal to know something's wrong. And the second thing is our very first episode, episode one. What did we talk about where we had the same final answer, but two different ways of looking at it? Do you remember?
It was the border wall, wasn't it?
The border wall, yes. Because we both agreed that it was a good thing, but you were like, oh, what was it? Like more of a, it's a deterrent, or no, it's a barrier
It's
to get through.
it's a permanent, tangible thing that it's not just a politician's promise.
And mine was the bleeding heart liberal answer. If you actually have it, if you can actually have the honest conversation that it might be a good thing, is it's going to prevent people from trying the dangerous thing.
Very, very dangerous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is going to at least I just said this puts a step. It puts a step in between and that makes you make better decisions.
Hmm.
If you have to get through that thing that is tangible, it is a deterrent. It is, do I really want to hire this mule who might human traffic me? Do I really want to swim across this river that I might die because the currents are pretty freaking nasty? Do
Hmm.
I really want to be alone in a desert trying to survive for days? Do I really want to cram myself in an 18 wheeler with 50 other people that might have infectious diseases? And oh, by the way, we're all dehydrated and going through 110-degree heat in the bottom of this thing. Do I really want to? Or is my life really not that bad? Or do I want to try to do it the legal way?
Hmm.
That gives you that moment of pause to go ahead and just relax and make a better decision. Your life may suck where you're at, but there's a better way to get to the good life. And if you react to the suck, you might make a bad decision.
Well, this ties again back to what we were talking about last time with rigid thinking and mental health. The problem is you use the term awareness, and you mentioned last time that there was a big debate you have had to buy the latest edition of the DSRM, and there was a big debate about whether or not to put narcissism in it because so many people have
DSMTR.
it now.
DSMTR.
So many people have narcissism now that it's normal.
No, they have the traits of narcissism.
The traits of narcissism.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah. Because
Thank you for being
this
more
is also
precise.
one of the big debates now is the DSM relevant? Because it's a categorical system.
Hmm.
Whereas, and there's so many overlapping. And in fact, this is so let me throw this thought out and maybe we'll do a whole episode on it is the more I'm thinking about it when it comes to like dark triad, dark tetrad, personality disorders and stuff, is they all boil down to antisocial. They all boil down to antisocial, and where the overlap is where the dysfunction is. Narcissistic traits can be beneficial. If you're a salesperson, you want to be a little bit narcissistic. I'm
If
sorry.
you're if you
If you're
even if you're a school age athlete, you need to have some degree of self-confidence, or anyone who has ever played a contact sport knows this. You are going to get hurt if you do not have some confidence. If you go if you flinch against the hit, you're going to get hurt worse.
I lost a fight because I hesitated, and it was basically a perceptual issue because had gone into the later rounds, and I got one of the best shots I'd ever got on somebody on him with my right hook was my money when it came to stand up, and my mind had him like just shaking it off. When I watched the video later, I rocked the shit out of him. But I hesitated because my mind showed me a different picture. And that allowed him to recover from it. And he ultimately won because I wasn't a later round fighter. I really wasn't. And I just kind of, the whole thing kind of formed together into his victory. And, but yeah, had I just been, boom, I got him. And my first thought was I got him and just not even paid attention to what he was doing. This is where the inputs can be deceptive, right? Had I just not paid attention and say I got him and just continued a combo, it would have been over.
Well, here's the wheel of time analogy I have that
Mm.
kind of hit me out of nowhere
Yeah, okay, we have to bring this in so we can put it on the cover.
when I was thinking about not just Charlie Kirk's murder, but then the reaction to it, and kind of out of nowhere, it the episode, it's like episode three or something of the first season, where when they were first going there, I was like, wait, are they finally getting to Bearlawn in some weird way? And it was more analogous probably to Four Kings,
Or White
um,
Bridge.
or White Bridge,
Yeah.
where um
Rand.
Matt and Rand go into this town, and they're staying at this inn, and the tavern girl turns out to be a dark friend. And it really annoyed the crap out of me as I thought about it, because I don't think we made this point at the time. The concept of that episode was actually really good, but because there was so much dumbness in it, and because the actress wasn't very good, and
And
the
Tom
writing
was
wasn't very good, Tom was awful.
they
Yeah,
made
it
yeah.
but it dawned on me that was actually a fantastic representation of dark friends and the allure of evil. Because what was that girl's point? My life sucks. It
Mm,
sucks here. This is a dead end, crappy mining town in the middle of nowhere, and I want out. And I don't care who you are and how I have to hurt you to do it. But this is my ticket out, and I'm taking it. I have, and there was some degree of rational rationalizing in her own mind, because she wasn't going to hurt them. She was just going to turn them over to the person who was going to hurt them.
hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I'm not the real bad guy here. I just need out of here. You should be able to understand that.
Hmm.
No, your complete lack of empathy is causing you to do direct evil and indirect evil in, what you are personally doing, but then also what you are supporting in the shadow, in the dark one, in,
Hmm.
those demonic forces. And you see that in the series a number of times, where you see kind of the panoply of the more dark friends you meet, and you see the different reasons, some of them odd, that people turn to the shadow. But the main one is, I'm not going to pull it up because I've done so a number of times, but I go back to that letter that Robert Jordan wrote to someone, talking about evil, the nature of evil.
Mm-hmm.
And he was kind of rebutting this idea that Lanfear wasn't so bad. And he was pointing out that all of them are evil because they don't care who gets harmed while they try and achieve their goal.
Which actually brings is perfect for my point. It all boils down to antisocial personality disorder. It all ends up overlapping with that, and that's when it becomes evil because it becomes me with complete disregard of anybody else because you have the you're blinded to the suffering of others or you're blinded to the effects of others. Back to our point of narcissistic personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
It can be beneficial all the way up until it harms somebody. And all the way up until it harms somebody and you don't care. And it all boils down to that at some point, some way, some shape, some form. A, a surgeon is good because they don't care about how you're going to feel after the surgery, just that he got the job done. Okay, positive. But the person who can't feel your distress when you are forcing yourself on them, that becomes evil because they can't feel it, they don't stop. Ted Bundy.
All right, so all this is was swimming around in my head, and my son is reading through the series, and he's up to Path of Daggers now, and he had gotten to the point where Egwene is manipulating the Hall into declaring war, and there's this scene there where she's getting when she's going to the meeting on the ice, and
Mm,
she runs through the Sidar exercise of the flower petal mental meditative exercise without actually embracing Sidar. And he commented that that was really interesting. And why can't Rand do that? And I was like, oh, I'm so glad you said that because it just reminded me of I couldn't tell him why Rand can't do that, which I'll get to later. It's because Rand doesn't know the whole story.
mm,
He's only been given the first part of the training. He doesn't get the second part of the training until the very end of the series. But it like a like a bolt of lightning, it reminded me of the scene in The Great Hunt where Lanfear is trying to get him to go into the void and stay there.
mm,
Okay. So this is The Great Hunt in the Mirror of Darkness is the chapter. And um Rand just like bullseyed a Grom in the eye.
hmm Yeah, that
And
was a great scene.
yeah. And um that was a magnificent shot, Celine said. A shot? Yes, a tiny target that eye, moving at 100 paces. You've a wonderful hand with that bow. Rand shifted awkwardly. Thank you. It's a trick my father taught me. He told her about the void, about how Tam had taught him how to use it with the bow. He even found himself telling her about Lan and his sword lessons. The oneness, she said, sounding satisfied. She saw his questioning look and added, that is what it is called in some places, the oneness. To learn the full use of it, it is best to wrap it around you continuously, to dwell in it at all times. Or so I've heard. I'll think about it. Wear this void of yours all the time, Randolph Thor, and you'll learn uses for it you never suspected. Now, there's a couple things going on there because she is incredibly smart and incredibly manipulative, but one of them is she's trying to help him but also trying to manipulate him into using Sidon more. But
hmm
also, I think she understands the potential danger to the void, which is the lack of empathy it creates.
hmm
Because the way Rand is using it, until he gets the final lesson, the way Rand is using it is he is shutting himself off from the world.
hmm
He is pulling himself into this bubble, this void within himself where there is no emotion. Now, when you have a literal monster charging at you and you need to shoot it before it kills you, that's a good thing.
Hmm.
because you don't want that fear. You have to make that shot to save your life and her life and Loyal's life and Huron's life.
Hmm.
That's important. But I think Lanfear also knows from the way he is when he's in the void, from the tone of his voice, there's no empathy in there. And in fact, remember, I hadn't even thought about this. This just hit me. Um, was it Moraine through the was it Moraine through the Ruidine portals, or was it something Egwene saw where they had a vision of Rand going off with Lanfear, and when he came back, his eyes were vacant. He was dead inside, and he called her master. I can't
Mm.
remember who that was, and
I believe that was Maureen.
I've I've always I think I always assumed he was turned with a capital T with that,
Mm.
but it occurs to me now, not necessarily. Not if she manipulated him into wrapping himself inside the void and destroying his humanity himself.
Hmm.
He wouldn't have had to have been turned. That's how he would be if he had followed her advice and permanently wrapped himself in the void and shut himself off not just from humanity but from his own humanity.
Hmm. Yeah, and it could have been metaphorical too,
Mhm.
because you can be manipulated so badly that you are not you.
Mm,
And that's again, I recommend that Chase Hughes video. It's only 23 minutes, I think, but he goes into exactly how everybody's being manipulated and how it works. And the first step is awareness. And I actually want to talk about the shooter for a second because maybe this is the bleeding heart liberal in me or whatever, but this young kid, his parents reported as they turned him in, quote, good on the parents, turn in
wow, I had
your
not heard
yeah,
that part.
yeah, you turn in your son when the person in charge of your state said we still have the death penalty. So they actually did the right thing, even
Hmm.
though they know they might be losing their child. Uh, but they talked about how he was recently radicalized. And that's an important point because what are the three functions of the justice system? There are three functions, and we have to figure out the balance. The first is what was supposed to be the way it was thought to be designed is rehabilitation. Can we make this person better? Can we get them back out in society? That's the humane function of the
Hmm.
rehabilitation of the justice system. It's not done very well at all because gangbangers just get harder, right? Things like that. Some people learn, some people get out and they change their lives, but that's one function that's supposed to be there. The second one is a deterrent, right? So punishment is bad. You don't want to be punished. It's a deterrent. So that's also a humane function. This person's example is going to cause 100 people to not do the bad thing, right? So a deterrent is good. The third one is, and this is where it gets really difficult from an ethical, moral standpoint, is there is a need in people, especially the victims, for revenge.
Hmm.
There is a need. As a society. This is where the words of the Utah governor come in because the first things he said basically is we still have the death penalty here. And that satisfied a need in a lot of Charlie Kirk supporters, Charlie Kirk fans, maybe his family. I don't know where. I'm not going to speak for individual people, but as a whole, it satisfied this need for vengeance. And that is a societal need, and it actually is interestingly in line with addiction. But uh, this need is satisfied. So what is the balance between these three things? Because what I'm hearing from the people involved in the investigation is this kid was radicalized over like the last 2 years. It was like that when he went to college. And when I'm talking about the good of all people, how far does that need for revenge go when I'm thinking of he was radicalized in a year or two? He's malleable, which means he can be rehabilitated. And how much do we need to punish him to keep it a deterrent, and how much of this is going to be revenge? Because if you just, I think Utah still has the firing squad. If you put him to the firing squad, what did you accomplish?
Mm,
Right? I am actually personally more curious about what's on his computer, what were the professors saying in his fucking classes,
hmm
who were his influences, who radicalized him in that way, and what were his favorite things to watch on TV and social media. I am more concerned about those things because that is actually the root of the problem. One young, dumb, full of cum kid is not is not the real problem. He fired the shot, but he is not the
hmm
real problem. And frankly, I would love a world where we could see rehabilitation there. Now, we still need enough to be a deterrent, right? We still need enough of punishment to keep it from happening again, and we need to satisfy the revenge motive. But at the same time, I am more curious about what got him there than his punishment period. And actually, I would love to see if it actually goes uphill, right?
Yeah.
I would love to see if there were people in his ears that actually had control over this thing.
There's been a lot of talk about that. Hopefully it actually happens. There's been some talk about, okay, it is way past time that we start looking into these far left NGOs who are funding these groups that lead to riots and crimes. And, if there's a there should be RICO charges. And all the way up the line, all the way
Mhm.
up to Soros and Gates and the people who are funding this.
Well, this is where I
Hopefully
have
that
to
actually
balance. Yeah,
happens.
this is where I have to balance my thoughts a little bit because I'm a freedom first person in almost every
Hmm
way. At the same time, there are real world repercussions for lots of things,
Yeah.
and we have laws on the books on defamation. We talked about earlier, what did he say or what did they tell you he said?
Yeah.
That's defamation.
hmm
If you call somebody literally Hitler, that is defamation with real world consequences
I would
because
love
someone
to
shoots
yeah.
you.
I would love to see his wife file a civil suit, much like the kid, Nick Sandman was his name, the
Hmm.
kid who was just standing there when that a-hole activist with the drum got in his face, and the media spun him as the kid as the instigator just because he was wearing a MAGA hat. And he successfully sued and got a ton of money from CNN, MSNBC, and I don't remember who else, three or four media outlets. I would love to see a similar case filed by, I believe her name is Erica Kirk, against the media outlets who slandered her late husband. That
Hmm.
would be awesome. And
Well, see, here's the speed bump, and this is the speed bump that will get us canceled, as I say it. If we treated defamation like violent crime, the the prisons would be full of women. We would no longer have a 93-7 split or something, whatever it is. We would have a 50-50 split.
okay, it's funny you say that because I was just about to bring up an analogy because you mentioned cancel culture earlier, and oh, you're all hypocrites for cancel culture. Hold on. There's something to be said for, and I do agree to, because just a few days ago, just that same week, I believe it was early this same week, there was an incident of a, as we call them now, Karen. I don't know if you saw this, but this dad ran over and got a foul ball or a home run or
Hmm.
something at a Phillies game, and this awful got in his face while he's hugging and celebrating with his kid, got in his face, and how dare you stole that from me, that was my ball. And he was getting crap from the right for giving in, and I'm like, you got your kid there, just like, you know what, a, a ball ain't worth it, just get out of here, go away.
Hmm.
Well, I don't know if it's true or not, but there are a lot of people saying that she was identified and she was fired.
That's
I
what I
am
hear
all
too. Yeah.
I am all
Yeah.
for public shame. You are an awful human being and you did something gross.
Hmm.
That was awful. What is wrong with you? But I also agree, no, she shouldn't be fired for for
Well,
for for
there's more
doing
to the story
something.
though,
There
because apparently the students of the school all banded together and said we can't.
Mm.
to this too. So if there's a balance. I mean, yes, they're the students, they should be learning and they should, learn a little respect for authority and everything.
What was she a
But if an
teacher?
authority figure at that school, she was an administrator. If an
Uh,
authority figure at that school
I'm shocked.
is doing something out of character of what you're trying to this is the thing about cancel culture is, or not cancel culture, but firings versus cancel culture is when you're running a business, you have an identity that is attached to that business, right? So I ran a gym, I had a few employees, and this is the level of integrity and the level of uh, hard work and all of these things that I wanted to represent the business. If someone didn't represent that, I have every right to fire them. And so she did not represent what they want the students to learn. And the students spoke out, right? So they have every right to fire her. It's not about public shame. It's about you are no longer representing our values.
In general, I would say though that kind of thing, yes, that's cancel culture. That's going too far. We should, in general, be able to separate our public, our work life and our private life.
Hmm.
But if you are
Yeah, but at
celebrating
the
the
same, yeah,
murder of someone, not
yeah,
not just celebrating the murder, but a lot of these ones that libs of TikTok and Andy know were sharing, they were sharing because there were people on Blue Sky saying, "Great job! Now do Andy know and libs of TikTok next."
or Elon Musk or Tim
Yeah,
Pool
and
or
a
yeah,
bunch of
yeah,
other
yeah,
names. Yeah, a
yeah,
bunch of names were thrown around there of do that person next. Oh no, 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 no. Yeah, you should be fired because that isn't just gross antisocial behavior. That's evil.
hmm
That's kind of what we're trying to talk about today is you have crossed the line from being just not a good person to you are an evil person. Congratulations, you're the baddies. You
hmm
are now the gift from that. I can't even remember what British sketch comedy show that was of the guy in the uniform of the little mustache man going, "Are we the baddies?" Like,
Yep.
yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Congratulations, you finally figured it out. But there is something of an antidote to this. Um,
Well, I've got a positive thought to close us too. So,
okay, well, and this is, so I started there with Lanfear manipulating Rand because Rand doesn't know the whole story. He hasn't been able to learn because he was yanked away from his father too soon. And that's why I've got, you know, my uncle Iroh, who I've referenced a number of times from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Why is Uncle Iroh and and where this fits? Because as you point out, the kid being young man being radicalized, and Uncle Iroh's whole point in the story is trying to teach this angsty teenager, as I talked about last episode, trying to teach this angsty teenager how to be his own man and what real values are. And I spent a lot of time on this when we were rereading through A Memory of Light, and you know, don't know how much this was RJ, don't know how much this was Sanderson, don't care. This is one of the greatest scenes in the whole series, and it's a big series, so that's saying something. And it's when Your Neck in a Cord is the chapter, page 308 in the first edition hardcover, and Rand goes to the camp. He's visiting all the different battle zones before he goes to the Pit of Doom, and he goes to visit Tam, and he brings him a sword because he lost his. And Tam knows because not only is this his son, but Tam himself has been there, done that. And so he knows what Rand is going through and says, "Come on, let's go. Let's have a sparring session." And he does that to give him the final lesson, to tell him, "I only taught you the first part of the flame in the void. You need to understand it before you go do this thing." Um, Tam sniffed. The flame and the void aren't about archery. Yes, I know they are a swordsman's technique. They're not about swords either, Tam said, strapping the sword onto his belt. But the flame and the void are about center, Tam said, and about peace. I would teach it to each and every person in this land, soldier or not, if I could. And then that's the lesson. But then in order to bring it home, he says, let's go sparring.
Hmm.
And as they're sparring, he sees the struggle, the frustration, the teenage angst that is still there, despite how much Rand has matured over this series, and especially now that he can remember being a, we don't exactly know, but I think Louis Theron was like 500 years old or maybe more.
Hmm.
Um, a very old man with children. Um, grown children. So in a way, he is a middle-aged man, and yet he's still got that teenage angst, especially because of all that has happened to him. Is Dad, I can't spar with you. He literally had his hand blown off. And you've talked about how actually surprisingly the some of the people with the best mental health are the most injured,
Hmm.
like quadriplegics who are happy.
Hmm.
I've referenced this
I
before.
think the study done that I'm thinking of off the top of my head was on people that broke their neck. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And Tam's like, no, come on, here. I'll tie my own arm behind my back and I'll duel you left-handed, Princess Bride style.
Hmm.
And as they're going through, he is using that because it's not enough for me to tell you. You've got to practice it. I'm going to show you.
Cool.
And it's let it go, son. Let it go. He is showing him. He told him it's not a sword technique. It's about peace. Now here's how you get it. So it you don't destroy your emotions when you feed them into the flame. You you enhance them.
Hmm.
It seems counterintuitive. It seems paradoxical, but it's a lot of what Martha Beck is talking about in her book Beyond Anxiety and activating that right hemisphere.
Well, I'll bring in just Buddhist thought as well. It is a lot of people say, oh, it's pushing it away. No, it's acknowledging it.
Mm-hmm,
If you truly practice mindfulness meditation in the Buddhist style, you are when a thought comes in, you don't push it away. You ask it, why are you here?
mm-hmm,
And then in asking that question, it allows you to kind of I'm trying to summarize a lot of pages of work in a couple lines, but it allows you to prioritize it in your life.
mm.
So if this random thought comes to your head, your grocery list for tomorrow, for instance, you can say, "Oh yes, that is important. Tomorrow, when I go to the grocery store." And then you can let it go until tomorrow when you go to the grocery store. It,
Maybe this popped into my head because there's something I need to remember. Let me go through.
mhm.
Yeah, I we're almost out of cat food. Let me put that on the list. All right.
Yeah.
Done.
And
I don't have to worry
and
about it anymore.
it's the balance between conscious thought and your default mode network, right? It's in the name, default mode network, which means it's kind of semi-automatic, right? But people who practice meditation for a long period of time in brain scans, so we have some physical evidence of this, the the regions of the brain that are responsible for the default mode network are down regulated on average. And if you have ruminating thoughts, guess where it comes from? It comes from that area, right? If you're laying in bed and you can't sleep because just thoughts going through your head, that's your default mode network. That is just going through. You're not consciously saying, oh, you know what? I would rather stay up late if I just thought about this and made it better, or just kind of thought through this a little bit more. No, it's something that just keeps popping up in your mind. That it is the curse of being human because dogs don't do that. You can see they can fall asleep in a second, right? Dogs don't do that. They because they don't have this system that we have as humans. Now, primates we're unsure about because they can't talk to us about it. You know, that's difficult. But yeah, so as humans, that is the blessing because we can think into the future, which is very beneficial for survival, which is our advantage over every other species in the world. But it's also why we can't sleep at night. It's also
Hmm.
why We get ulcers and zebras don't, as Sapolsky would write a book about. That it's yeah. But back to the oneness, it is that balance between what makes us human, why are we special versus I can't control everything.
Mm.
And that was Rand's problem, rigid thinking, right? He thought he needed to control everything to win. And that's where sparring comes in. Sometimes you give it a little ground. Sometimes you take a little ground. Sometimes someone gets the better of you for a second, but you learn from what they did so you can get the better of them the next time. It's a dance, a dance with the world.
So we're running out of time here, and I just thought of
Mhm.
something. So we've really crossed the streams today, and we're going to keep crossing them because I want to segue this into. I'm going to go through from Martha Beck's Beyond Anxiety, her first practical exercise on how you activate that right hemisphere and calm that anxiety and quiet that left hemisphere, because there is a connection here that I hadn't really considered before, when Tam is talking about what the oneness, what the void really is, and about how it's about peace. So I'm gonna do that next time so we can have a practical exercise of that, and maybe that will help some people. But my closing thought, because of the heavy topic we're talking about here, and you know the 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 radicalization that comes from being closed off, from being in a bubble, is, we mentioned last time, because I was talking about Beck and her work and her theory on creativity to exercise that right hemisphere in the same way you exercise your muscles. And it dawned on me, because I went out with my wife to dinner with work friends last night, and you know something came up as we were talking, and I just kind of looked over, and we're sitting here doing it. And a good way to help out with this is to get out and make a connection. Don't
Hmm.
just be with people. And maybe you're not much of a group person. And to me, I get uncomfortable when we go out in a big group, but I do it anyway because I want to be with her. I know I need some social interaction, but also eventually, if you start at like a house party or a big dinner or whatever, and
Hmm.
eventually people just kind of break off, and I'm much more comfortable when it's just a couple of people. And it just kind of dawned on me, because I brought this up when we were talking to a friend of my wife's last night, and because we have a connection, she's sitting over there on the bed with her headset on, Bluetooth to the TV, watching one of her shows. I'm sitting over here with my headset on, talking to my best friend about philosophy and overthinking the wheel of time. But I feel at peace
Mm.
because we have that connection. It's just comfortable to be in the same room. We're doing two entirely different things. And yet, if she got up and went to the kitchen, I wouldn't be as at peace as I am right now with her just sitting there doing her own thing while I'm sitting here doing my own thing. You need to not just be with people, but connect with people. And you
Yes, and
do that by listening and being open.
I'm gonna use one word for the two things you just said. Being present.
Mm.
Being present. This is one of my problems with the way a lot of things are going, and I'm gonna bring an example of I actually brought this up in class and everybody laughed, and I'm like, I'm serious. Is when you go to a country western bar now, dance hall. We've got a few here, Rowdy's, Whiskey River just opened up. It's really nice. All those things. You used to go out and get on the dance floor and dance with people. And it's you and the other person. You're trying, you may be, thinking about the rhythm and the dance moves and everything. We actually have a Wheel of Time example of this when they're in Barrelon, right? Because the boys started stumbling
Yeah.
around when Warren jumps in there or Nynaeve jumps in there and like, oh my gosh, I can't be dancing with this person, you know? And that's a human moment. That was one of the, actually, it sticks out to me because it was a great human moment. It
Yeah.
was a well-written
Yeah.
human moment because I mean, especially those of us that are guys, you get in. It would be, it's like varsity boobs, varsity blues when they go to they get in illegally to the strip club and Miss Davis comes out dancing, right? They're all having that moment in Varsity Blues
God,
because
I had forgotten about that, and I'm annoyed you mentioned that because our senior English teacher was named Miss Davis, and
yeah, yeah, it wouldn't have
I
the
don't want
same
to.
effect.
No,
Yeah, it would not
no.
have the same effect. But the point of, I mean, it became a human moment, and then
Yeah.
the punchline to that was I can't remember the name of the guy in the movie, in the show, in the movie. Yeah, that was the movie Varsity Blues, where he says, "Miss Davis, will you go to prom with me?" It was a great moment because these kids were like thrown out, and I had read The Wheel of Time first, so I thought of that when I saw that scene where everybody starts stumbling over their own feet and they can't even make sense of the world at that moment. But it's real human connection when you're actually dancing with somebody.
Mm.
And that's what made it awkward for them because they were having a real human connection to this basically ethereal person in Moiraine, right? Or the authority figure in Nynaeve.
Mm.
So it was having a real connective moment with somebody that had been disconnected from you. Or
And was necessary to happen because of what was going to happen going forward.
exactly, exactly. And they needed that because you're developing bonds and trust. It's not just I'm telling you what to do anymore. It's I have to trust you for this thing. You're telling me what to do, but I'm kind of an angsty boy and I want to rebel. But also, I don't know you from Adam, but now
Mm.
I just danced with you.
Mm.
And so human connection is when you're out on the dance floor, the amount that's more than a lot of couples have in 5 minutes of a song, 3 minutes of a song. And now everybody line dances. And I say it this way, line dancing is the social media of dancing because you're out there with people,
Yeah.
but you're still doing your own thing.
Hmm.
And all you have to do is know the steps. You're not actually doing something with people, but you're doing something with a lot of people. And all you have to do is think about yourself. It's egocentric instead of allocentric. Allocentric is where you're looking at the relativity of everything in your environment each other. Egocentric is when you're looking at everything relative to yourself. It's Google Maps. Recenter the map on me instead of I need to pay attention to where I'm going and I need to know the street names and I need to know east and west in my life. I need to do all of those things. It is the freaking social media of dancing and everybody, no one's getting anything out of it except a giggle and a laugh when someone messes up. I bring this up. I've experienced this. I was at one of these dance halls and there was a guy on the dance floor, every line dance. He knew them all by heart. He knew he had every step and he hit everyone perfect and he looked completely out of place because there was no connection. This guy was probably in the area I lived in. He probably worked at NASA, was probably an engineer, and probably was trying to connect to people. So he learned these dances to get out there and talk to people. He went home alone that night. And I don't think I ever saw him talk to a girl. He went out there and knew every dance, every step of the way, and was perfect. Never missed a beat. But he didn't connect with a single soul. And that breaks my heart a little bit. But how did we get on this train of thought so I can pull it back?
Oh, I don't even remember. I was talking
Oh,
about
connecting to
connecting
people. Connecting,
and
yeah, connecting to
o-
people. Which actually brings me to
openness
my
and
closing
yeah,
comments if you're ready.
yeah, yeah. We need to
Yeah.
close it out.
So I'm gonna lean on Chase Hughes here again today. This is a thought I've had, but he said it eloquently, and I think I have this quoted right, even though I didn't write it down while he was talking in that video that I'm gonna link it in the comments. Uh, we are more in common with our neighbor who voted for the other party than the one you voted for, than the person on TV or social media representing the party that you agree with.
Mm, that reminds me of what my closing thought needs to be because we were talking about this before we started recording, and it's really important because of where we started and what we were talking about today is a lot of people has been sharing, and I'll paraphrase here because I don't remember the exact quote, but Charlie Kirk had a great saying that he said a number of times, which is when when married couples stop talking to each other,
Yeah,
divorce
that is the quote.
happens.
Let me quote it directly.
Okay.
Uh,
Because
uh,
this is important. This is why that connection matters, and it ties in perfectly with that quote from Hughes.
okay, so this is the direct quote. When marriages stop talking, divorce happens. When people stop talking, really bad stuff starts.
Hmm. And we have stopped talking. We talk a lot, but we're
Well,
not
the
talking
guy
to
the
each
guy who
other. We're
wanted to
talking
keep
at each
talking
other.
got shot.
Yeah. But he was talking to people. Back to where I started from, and the
Not at
difference
people.
between
Yeah.
him and others in that space who do the similar thing. But you watch Charlie Kirk, and he's talking to someone.
In
There's an
fact,
awful lot of people talking at people.
there's been times where he stopped the debate to ask if they were okay because they were nervous or they were, having a coughing fit or, hey, do we need to get you a glass of water? Are you okay? Are you feeling all right? Do you need a second before we go on? That kind of stuff. And that's what you don't get in the Instagram reels or the
Mm-hmm.
TikToks or whatever. You don't get that full experience. Uh, and again, this is a guy that on so many issues I would disagree with. And we have evidence of this. We have 300 and this is 386, 387. We have 380 something episodes of me and you disagreeing on you would be more on his side on something and
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But what he stood for in the delivery of this and how it should take place, that is I'm 100% behind because that is true liberalism. He was the most conservative liberal ever, right? And that was taken from the world by someone who is radicalized by a system that wants us to be fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a saying in the English language in America, shots fired. That means the other that means when you say shots fired, that means you're justifying your next move.
Mm-hmm.
And let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll continue this, but in a different vein and hopefully a more practical vein, because I want to go into, some of the techniques you can use for yourself to help with this, because you need to figure yourself out. Got the like I said, I got the Uncle Iroh shirt on for a reason. You need to figure yourself out before you can work with other people.
Mm.
And so that's a lot of what Martha Beck is talking about of you need to figure yourself out because your anxiety is antagonizing my anxiety, which antagonizes your anxiety, which and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's going to be a debate, but it might be more nuanced than what you just said because
Mm,
we have our extended phenotype, right? So I'm going to use
mm,
scientific terms here. Extended phenotype is what I am as a person genetically and what brought me to where I'm at and how I affect the environment around me, which is what you're talking about. So how to make yourself affect the environment around you in a positive way. But there is a dimension of it where we learn from our environment around us. And if we're receptive to the proper cues, we can learn positive manifestations of our behaviors from the environment. And actually we should. That's what culture is.
mm,
Culture in its raw form before technology has brought us to where we are, it was how do we how do we exist together as individuals? And different regions took it in different directions because of the different environments. Collectivist cultures are also in the places where you do things like grow rice, which is a collectivist agricultural endeavor. Individualist cultures, Texas, where freaking nature is trying to kill you all the time. Australia, where freaking nature is trying to kill you all the time. You know, those kind of things. So it's the culture matches where you are with the person, and it doesn't mean there's one right way, one wrong way. It might depend on where you are, but also you get to extremes of culture too. So it's yeah, it's a very nuanced conversation because those inputs from your environment, including your culture, are important. And so when I'm dealing with somebody else, I have to be receptive to that. But you're also right that you have to have a base of self uh, awareness about yourself. So
All right. Well, we'll get extra super nerdy next time, and we'll see y'all
I'll
then.
I'll wear my glasses next time, maybe. Whoop. All right, later.